Is your student trying to get through the activity section of the Common Application and you have no idea where to start? Today's video will help. Hey there, parents and families. My name is Andrew Hoffman. Welcome back to my channel. I've been doing college admissions for about 15 years and I've helped countless students through the Common Application. I wanted to walk you through the next section in today's video. Next, we'll cover extracurricular activities, the college essay or the personal statement, as well as the additional information section of the Common Application. This is the third video in a long series on the Common Application walkthrough. You can actually click the link above and get started and come back to this video if this is the first time you're watching it. Now, if you're ready, let's dive in. All right, now let's move on to activities. You're going to be reporting extracurricular activities, hobbies, things that you like doing outside of the classroom. You can also indicate family responsibilities, and there's a whole list on the Common Application website about what this means: caring for children, supervising maybe siblings, for example, taking care of elderly grandparents. You can indicate all of those things, and absolutely should. So it's asking, do we have anything to report? And the answer is certainly yes. We are doing a number of things in high school. One is community service. I volunteer, for example, and this is asking for the position or leadership description. So I was really involved in Key Club. That was something that was really important to me in high school, and I made it to the district board and served as governor. And so I can indicate that. You can see that I have a spelling error there. The organization name, Key Club International, and then I'm going to very briefly describe what I did in that activity, if I accomplished anything or I had a recognition. If this is not enough, you can also indicate maybe a paragraph in the additional information section. For really typical activities, it might not be required, but if you have substantial leadership, you might want to talk about that in a different paragraph. You also will indicate the level of participation. So in what grades did you do this? This can be a little confusing. So for example, I was in Key Club all 4 years, but I only served as the governor for the very end of my 11th grade and 12th grade. So I would probably put 12th grade here, but you could also put 9th through 12th as well. Again, it's going to be a little confusing completing this, but you can also hit that preview button to see exactly what it's going to look like. It'll also ask about timing of participation. Did I do this during the entire school year, during the school break, or all year? And you can hit all three of those. If honestly, you could hit all year and it'll indicate to the admissions office that you did it all year, but you can hit all three of those as well. And then it's going to ask, how many hours per week did you spend doing this activity or participating in this? How many weeks a year did you do this? And then do you want to participate in college in a similar activity at least? And then we can indicate that we did some journalism. I was editor-in-chief of the school newspaper, for example. And you could put that, you could put the newspaper's name too, but the admission officer might not know that, right? And so you can say school newspaper, put the newspaper name and the organization name. You can indicate again what you did. You want to be as brief as you can here. Try not to use too many abbreviations, but if it's like org instead of organization, you could absolutely use that abbreviation. It really depends on the activity, but admission officers are pretty well versed in a lot of these activities. And then see, this is an indicator where I did newspaper for all 4 years, but I only served as editor-in-chief for my 12th grade. So again, you could do either way and know that, you know, we assume if it's editor-in-chief or a major leadership position, student body president, for example, that you weren't student body president or editor-in-chief all 4 years, but you did that activity for all 4 years. And we'll indicate that we did this in the school year only. Maybe we didn't do it during the summer, and, you know, the summer minus the school year. All right, now let's preview this and we can see exactly how it's going to show up on the Common Application preview. So I see that I spelled that wrong like I indicated earlier. You always want to check your work, and now you can see that that's changed. So if you feel like that's a good description, that's great. If not, you can also change that a bit. And you can see that it looks like the entire year here, for example, on the first one, and just during the school year for the second one. And I might change that if I wanted to clarify that I actually did it for all year plus the school year plus the breaks. Again, you know, I don't think that that's a big deal in terms of how that shows up, but if you want to be really clear, you can. We'll continue on to responsibilities and circumstances. So let's just pause here and we can take a look at this together. So there are lots of things that don't fall in clubs in organizations, in kind of official work or official volunteering, right? So this says sometimes academics and activities are impacted by household responsibilities or other circumstances. Sharing this information with colleges can help them better understand the context of your application. You may repeat information you already provided elsewhere in your Common App. And it's going to ask, if you can select which responsibilities you spend 4 or more hours per week doing, right? So if you only maybe take care of your little brother or sister for a half hour a week, that's not significant. And so you don't need to indicate that here. But if you have any significant responsibilities, right, assisting family or household members with doctor's appointments or bank visits or visa interviews, a lot of students who have immigrant parents are actually helping with this. Maybe their parents are not speaking English or English is not their first language. They're assisting with a lot of those things. Maybe your family owns a family business or you own a ranch or a farm. You can indicate that. Even if you're not being paid for that work, maybe your family is being paid, you can indicate that. Interpreting or translating for family or household members, managing family and household finances, budgets, paying bills. A lot of students take on very adult responsibilities, and so college admission officers want to know about this. Providing transportation, maybe you drive younger siblings or elderly grandparents to doctor's visits or soccer practice. You take care of other family members if they're sick or disabled. You're taking care of younger family members. Maybe your parents work in the evening and you're helping to take care of them. Maybe you have your own child or children, and you could be in high school, or you could be a transfer student, or you could be a much older student who's applying for undergraduate level coursework, or that could be a responsibility that you have. And then you also work at a part-time job. So this could be tricky. You could indicate a part-time job. You work in the summer as a lifeguard, for example, under extracurricular activities in the other section that we just filled out. But if you're also working to help contribute to your household's income, you should check that off here. That would be a really important responsibility, because we would also know that when you start at my institution, you might be sending money home, part of your part-time job on campus. And I think everyone from your advisor or financial aid officer might really want to know that information so that we can best support you. And then there's the other category. So if you are doing something that's not on this list, but that you think is really important, you can indicate that. And then of course you can indicate that you're not doing any of these things. So let's just say I'm managing family household finances and providing transportation and take caring of younger siblings. And I also work. I work at a pizza place, and it's pretty significant for me. So you can see those things are listed on the Common App preview for the admissions office. Now you could go back and add another activity, and maybe that's that part-time job. Maybe you weren't thinking about activities as jobs. So you want to say, I have a paid job, and let's say that I'm a shift leader, and I'm a shift leader at Shakey's Pizza Parlor, which is what I did in high school. And I would indicate my responsibilities for working at Shakey's and the grade levels, just like all of the other activities. Now, I highly recommend that you do fill this out if you do have paid work. You could also come back and say, my activity was helping taking care of siblings, and write about that. Maybe you don't want to just check the box off, but you actually want to write about, like, I tutor in their math and science classes, and, or they're homeschooled and I help with their curriculum, like whatever it actually might be. You can indicate that. And then you can hit the preview button again. You see Shakey's. Now, just a note here also that you're going to list these in order typically of importance. And what's important to you might not be important to me. And so this is a judgment call, but just know, like, activity 1 is always going to go at the very top. And admission officers can scan activities. They can scan lots of parts of the application, to be honest with you. So you just want to make sure that if an admissions officer is looking at a whole page of stuff, but they have so many applications to get through, you want to indicate the most important things at the very top that get their attention. So for me, I probably would put governor of the Key Club District, because that was a really important leadership activity that I had, but totally up to you in terms of how you want to do this. And so just know that that's going to be the order in which they are displayed. And we will move on. So it also asks, and this is important, right? So it also asks, have you experienced any of these circumstances? And this is the contextual nature of holistic admissions. Admission officers want to understand, okay, so it looks like you received this test score or this AP examination score, but you also really live without consistent heat, power, water, access to food. That really might affect your test scores or academic performance or whatnot. And, every college is going to have a different interpretation of that, but this is where you can indicate some of those things. So let's go through each of these. Commuting 60 minutes or more to and from a school each day. Maybe you live in the Bronx and you're going to school in Queens or Staten Island or something like that, and you have a really long commute in front of you. You can indicate that. Maybe you're coming from rural Wyoming and the nearest high school is an hour away, and that's another reason for that. You experience homelessness or another unstable living situation. Maybe you're couch surfing in high school, staying with friends or different family members, living without consistent heat, power, water, access to food, living without reliable or usable internet. So if you are asked, for example, to do everything online, but you don't have broadband internet access, and maybe you go to the local McDonald's to access their internet, you should click that box because that's going to be an indicator. You're living independently or living on your own. So this wouldn't include boarding school, but let's say you have an apartment on your own, your parents kicked you out of the house for whatever reason, you can also indicate that. And so you could also indicate maybe you're homeless by its official definition and you're living independently. Obviously, every circumstance is a little different. And if none of these apply to you, you're going to indicate that none of these apply to you. So let's just say I experience homelessness and I want to put that on the application. Now it's going to ask about personal essay. So not every college is going to require an essay. Not every college is going to take or put a lot of stock into your essay, but some absolutely do. And so this is where you're going to complete your essay. Now, you should really complete your essay outside of the Common Application. You should have a Word doc or a Google Doc or something. You shouldn't just be typing into the Common Application, especially if you're on your phone, for example. I wouldn't just copy and paste and call it a day. Sometimes copying and pasting can be really challenging in terms of formatting, but it is going to indicate here if your current list of colleges on your dashboard require an essay. And you can see we actually don't have any colleges listed right now, and so you're not going to see that. You do have to say that you understand that, if a college requires it, that you need to complete it. And these are the prompts. We're not going to go through all of these. You can pause the video here. There are pros and cons and pluses and minuses for answering each of these, but this is where you would write your essay. And so yes, you can copy and paste, but just make sure that you're doing the preview, that you're understanding what the formatting looks like, that bold or underline is rendering correctly. And you do have a minimum number of words, for example, and characters that you can see here as well. So in this example, we haven't fulfilled the personal essay. And then there's the additional information section, is where you can indicate any number of contextual factors in the admissions process. I actually have a whole unit in my parents' ultimate course on college admissions dedicated to additional information, because this can be a really strategic way of noting unique or special things about you. This is not the section where you copy and paste, I don't believe, where you copy and paste your resume, or you maybe copy research articles that you participated in, or any number of these things. This is not the section for that. Instead, this is a section where you indicate that you had a community disruption. For example, let's say your teachers union went on strike for a number of weeks and you really were not prepared to take that advanced placement examination in AP biology, but you still did. You still got a 3. It doesn't look great maybe for your circumstances. Maybe you're wishing for a 4 or a 5, but you really think that might have affected your AP examination. That's where you would add a few sentences here. If you had family disruptions, you want to talk about a loss of a family member, maybe your family was deployed in the military and you've moved several times, you just need a little bit more of a section to talk about this. That is what additional information really is. And so go through these, really think about in what ways am I indicating in my application itself the unique circumstances of my life, and is there anything else that I want to talk about here? You might not have anything, and that's totally fine, but if you do feel comfortable sharing, this is where colleges will use this information to contextualize your application. So again, you can copy and paste from another document if you want. There is a maximum of 250 words. So, like I said, you don't want to just copy and paste tons and tons of information that's not really relevant. And then it says, would you like to share any additional details or qualifications not reflected in the application? And you can do that here. So these are two different sections. The first section is a little bit more about these unique circumstances and challenges. The second one is anything else that you want to talk about. And you could use that strategically. You could still talk about challenges and circumstances and the additional information if you run out of room. But this is another way that you can indicate information to an admissions office. Thanks so much for watching this walkthrough video. I really hope that it gave you some technical skills on how to complete the Common Application. In next week's video, we're going to continue with our Common Application walkthrough. Our fourth in the series will cover courses and grades, recommendation letters, as well as college supplements. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with your friends and family. Until next time, good luck, and we'll see you in the next video.